So basically, the context in which to understand, so basically the Prophet ﷺ said, the intelligent one is he who has subdued his lower self and who has worked for what comes after death. And the incapable, handicapped one is the one who has put his lower self in pursuance of its desires and who has vain hopes about Allah. So the word that is used to describe the intelligent person is al-kayyis. This means intelligent, clever, somebody who knows what they're doing, somebody who knows what is important in life. So the first thing that we learn from this hadith is what we should be intelligent about, right? There is dunya matters and there are akhirah matters. So what should we actually be intelligent about? Like, there are a lot of people who measure intelligence by way of what it brings them in dunya, right? Like, if somebody has a lot of money, we say this person must be very intelligent because they know the means, they know the pathways, they know the techniques to make money. If somebody is, like just successful in like sports or academics or whatever, we say that, oh, this person has really made use of their intelligence. They have really been productive with their lives. They have really, put into use like what they have been given, right? So it's considered a praiseworthy quality, and we often associate it with worldly success. We often associate it with the things that we can see and measure in dunya, right? A lot of times when we put effort into something and we don't see the results, we think that it wasn't worthwhile, right? We think that maybe we misplaced our talents, we misplaced our abilities. A real life example of this would be somebody who, they studied, they got all these degrees, they did everything they were supposed to do, but they, let's say they were working in a place where they didn't get paid much, for example, when they could have gotten a high paying job elsewhere. So somebody would say, oh, this person is not intelligent. Why would they say that? It's because they would think only from the material point of view and see that, okay, you're not getting your return on investment. Like, you put so much money and effort into building yourself up, into making something of yourself, and you're not actually getting like the benefits of that back. You're not getting the results of that back. So the worldly people would say this person is not intelligent. But Rasulullah ﷺ is now reframing it for us. He's reframing what is intelligence and how does that play out in your dunya versus akhirah. So he said the intelligent one is the one who has subdued his lower self. So you have overcome yourself. You have overcome your nafs, right? And in previous classes we discussed there were 4 types of nafs. Right? We have the predatory nafs, the one that is always after people, it's greedy. We have the cattle-like nafs, which is lazy, it just wants to have pleasure, it doesn't want to do anything. We have the shaitani nafs, which is the devil, which is the devilish nafs, right? It incites you to evil. And then we have the malaiki nafs, the angelic nafs, which basically means that it's the type of nafs that tells you to do good. Right? So when you become acquainted with the type of nafs that you have, right? What type of nafs do I have? What is my ego like? What does myself tell me to do? Right? When you come to know yourself, that is part of intelligence. So the Prophet ﷺ is actually placing a huge amount of importance on self-knowledge. And then he says, knowing is not enough, right? But you have to actually work to overcome that. You have to work to overcome your own limitations, your own weaknesses, your own desires. And as a result of that true acquaintance with the self, now this person starts acting in accordance to what is right, right? Because somebody who knows and then doesn't do the right thing is not intelligent, right? We don't consider that intelligence. But if somebody who knows what to do and then they act upon it, that is intelligence. So he said he starts working for what comes after death. And he's basically referring to Jannah, right? The akhirah. Because we know we have a final destination. So if we don't work towards our final destination, we essentially are not being smart, right? And then he says the incapable one, or the handicapped one, the Arabic word used here is ajiz. Ajiz has meanings of laziness, has meanings of weakness, being paralyzed, like mentally, and not working towards what's beneficial. So he's saying that the ajiz person is the one who has put his lower self in pursuance of desire. So this person, like all his efforts, all his goals, everything that he does, it's all about how can I get the most pleasure out of this life, right? How can I satisfy myself? How can I satisfy my desires? That's what the incapable person, the ajiz, is after. His goals are different, right? and he has vain hopes about Allah. So the word used here is tamanna. So tamanni in Arabic, or tamanna, it basically means that you have hope in something, but it's not a good kind of hope, right? We are supposed to have hope in Allah. The good hope is called raja, right? Raja is when you do good deeds and then you hope Allah will accept, right? So you're doing the work and then you're hoping to get the reward. That's raja, that's a good type of hope. We all are supposed to have that hope. The bad kind of hope is tamanni, which is where you don't do anything, but you just say, Allah's merciful.
It's kind of
Wish, yeah, you wish, you're like, yeah, it'll be nice to have Jannah, that's so awesome. Like, you know, Allah's merciful, Allah's Ghafur Rahim, it's fine if I commit sins here, there, I don't have to make tawbah, maybe when I'm old, I'll go to Hajj, right? Or maybe when my kids grow up, then I'll, do something. So it's like people have different, based on their circumstances, they make up excuses, right? Somebody who's in school, they'll be like, okay, when I go to college, when I get older, when I get married, when I do this, then when I get a good job, then I'll start giving sadaqah, for example, right? So they have this like idea, but they don't know that when they're going to die, right? We don't know when we're going to die. So they're not planning ahead. They're not planning for the akhirah. They're just living in the moment, just enjoying, do whatever they want. Like, they don't care if it's halal or haram. And even the halal, like even if they're enjoying the halal, it's like they're forgetting about Allah. There's no dhikr, there's no accountability, right? No muhasabah. There's nothing like, how did my day go? Did I serve people? Was I kind to people, right? Did I give sadaqah, even if it was $1? Did I speak nicely to them? Did I fulfill the rights of the people around me? There's no self-accountability. They're just living blindly, and they're telling themselves, it's okay, Allah will forgive me. So that's having tamanni. And the Prophet ﷺ is actually warning against that, right? So he divided these two people. So the intelligent one is the one whose priorities are clear, they act on it, and then they hope in Allah, and they prepare for the hereafter. They know where they're going. And the other person, just kind of lost. They don't really care about where they're going. All right, and then we have, okay, so the nafs basically. So the nafs is like a toddler, right? Like, the nafs is very, very demanding, right? So when this person is acquainted with their nafs, they're able to discipline their own nafs the way you discipline a child, right? You don't, if the child says, I want candy, you're just gonna keep giving them candy, right? You say no. So when your nafs asks you for something, and it's wrong, you say no. You have to say no to yourself, right? So, but in the Western culture, outside of religion, what do they teach you? It's freedom, right? Do whatever you want. No limits, no restrictions, nothing. But the nafs is like a baby. A lot of scholars have used this example. So just the way you tell a baby or you tell a toddler no, you have to tell yourself no, right? Expecting forgiveness for sins committed knowingly. So if you're committing sins and you know that you committed sins and you don't ask Allah for tawbah, you don't make istighfar, you don't make tawbah, and you know that, then you fall under this category, right? The one who has tamanni, basically. And the nafs is the biggest enemy. So people have asked the scholars over the years, is shaitan a bigger enemy, or is the nafs your bigger enemy? And a lot of them have said, actually your nafs, even bigger than shaitan. Why? Because if your nafs is pure, right? If your nafs is clean, you have disciplined your nafs, shaitan has less power over you. When shaitan comes and whispers, when he gives you waswasa, you can say no, because you already said no to yourself, right? So whether the jinn shayateen come or even human shayateen, right? There's human shayateen as well, the people who tell you to do bad things, right? In Surah An-Nas, Allah says, Min al-jinnati wan-nas, exactly. So in Surah An-Nas, we read Surah An-Nas, we ask Allah for protection from the jinn who are shayateen and the humans that are shayateen. So the person who doesn't know how to say no to themselves, to their own nafs, how are they going to say no to shaitan? They can't, right? They can't say no to shaitan because they don't have the power, they don't have the strength, the inner strength, the spiritual strength to say no to shaitan. So they're just going to obey, obey, obey. But the person who's hard on themselves, like Umar ibn Khattab, he was very hard on his own self, on his nafs, very, very hard. But with everybody else, he was so merciful. And what do we know about Umar ibn Khattab and shaitan? Yeah, so when Umar radiallahu anhu was so strong in his iman, right, in his taqwa, he was so strong that when he was walking down the road, shaitan would run away, take the other road. Shaitan was afraid of him. Why? Because his nafs was so disciplined. He was not somebody who was just going to let himself off the hook, make excuses for himself. Oh yeah, I'm Umar, I'm the Prophet's best friend, it's okay, Allah will forgive me. even though he was Umar radiallahu anh. He didn't do that for himself, right? No excuses. When he did something wrong, he did muhasabah, took himself to account. He was the most hardest on himself. So that's why Shaitan was even afraid of him. Okay, so the next hadith is the believer is one who is sociable with others, and there is no good in the one who is not sociable with others, nor in one who is not met sociably by them. So what's basically being said is like the person who cannot get along with people. You know, there are some people who have different personalities, right? Different character traits. There are some people who are very warm, they smile, they say salam to everyone, they shake their hand, whatever. And everybody feels like welcome, they feel warm in their presence, they feel like, oh, this person really cares, you know, like they really care about me, they're very nice, very kind, they help people, like, oh, can I hold something for you? And then there's other people who, they don't talk to anyone. Don't say salam to anyone. They see a Muslim, they just, even if you say salam to them, just walk by you, right? It happens like you see a Muslim in Walmart or Target, you say salam and they just like ignore you, right? Like they didn't even see you. So it's very un-Islamic to do that, right? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, give salam to those you know and those you don't know, right? So it's part of good akhlaq. So he's saying that the believer is the one. What is the description of a mu'min? He's giving the description. The description of the mu'min is the one who is able to be social with others, right? And they don't like turn away and just stay alone all the time in their little cave. Like, you know, they stay in their house all day, don't leave, don't help anybody out, don't mix with anyone. That's not the description of a believer. A believer is supposed to be the one, they know people and they treat people well and people like to be in their company. That's the believer. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he was like that himself, right? There were Sahaba who described him. They said, we never saw anyone who smiled more than the Prophet ﷺ. He was always smiling. Even though he's remembering Allah always, with the people, he's always smiling. He's always kind, always like amazing character, because that's who he was. He trained himself to be that way with everyone. So just because if he's having a bad day, doesn't mean he's going to take it out on you, right? If he's angry at someone else, he's not going to take it out on you. Not start yelling at you, becoming, you know, rude or whatever, dismissive, like, oh, I don't want to talk to you right now. He was never like that with anyone, right? And then he said that there is no good in someone. Like, he's actually negating. He's saying that if you're the type of person that people are afraid to talk to you because you're so moody, you're so negative, you need to change that about yourself, because that's not the quality of a believer. So basically, love between Muslims, like we are supposed to have this love and attachment to each other as Muslims. Like, even if you don't know someone, just the fact that they're Muslim, it should be enough to make you feel something towards them, feel compassion, feel kindness, feel something warm in your heart towards them. So if they're going through something, you feel like you want to help, right? Under Allah's shade, we're going to cover that hadith in the next one. So it's actually very hard. There's two types of rights, right, we have to fulfill in Islam. There's rights of Allah, huquq Allah, and then huquq al-ibad, right? There's rights of the people. So whatever is between us and Allah, like we have salah, we have zakah, we have salah, we have fasting, things like that, that's between us and Allah, right? It's a vertical transaction. So if you fail in those things, Allah can choose to forgive you, right? Allah can choose, okay, to punish you or to forgive you. But when it comes to you and another person, right? Like if I hurt Sister Naima's feelings, it's up to her to forgive me or not, right? Allah's not going to forgive me unless she forgives me, right? So with the people, it's very, very it's very important to make sure that we give them their right, right? Because like husbands have rights, wives have rights, parents have rights, children have rights in Islam, right? Everybody. Women, yes, women have rights, absolutely. Yeah. So like every category of people that you can possibly think of, Allah has given them their own rights, right? So when you take away their right, now it's between you and Allah, because that person, if they don't forgive you, then basically you might get punished on the Day of Judgment, right? It's up to that person to forgive you. So that's why it's very hard to keep those relationships healthy and proper, right? So it takes more effort, basically. Okay, ways to increase our love. Okay, so like what are some of the things that we can do to become kinder to each other? What are some ways we can do that? So one, spreading the salam, because we know that from the sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ said that spread the salam, because what is it going to do? It's going to create love between you, right? So we should be saying salam to people. Number two, we should be giving gifts to each other. It doesn't have to be like expensive gifts, right? Like maybe you see somebody at the masjid every day, you bring them like dates, you bring them Zamzam water, you bring them, like you made something special at home. Like some of the sisters, you sit here and share with each other. Like, there's sisters who, give stuff to each other. So when you give these little gifts, what you're showing the other person is, I thought about you, right? I care about you. I remembered you. And then it builds the love and the warmth and all that stuff. So giving gifts is sunnah as well. And then what else can we do? The Prophet ﷺ said, how do you build compassion? How do you feel for the person? So like he said, the ummah is like one body, right? The ummah is like one body. So if one part is hurting, the whole body is crying, right? Like your whole body feels like, if I have a toothache, it's not just my tooth that's hurting, then my head is going to start hurting, my body's going to start hurting, right? Your ear is going to start hurting. There's so many things. So it's like if a Muslim in like Somalia is hurting, I have to hurt too. If a Muslim in Kashmir is hurting, if a Muslim in Morocco is hurting, if they're going through something, I have to feel their pain. I have to be soft enough. It's not just enough for me to give charity, right? Charity is great, but I have to do both. I have to feel the emotion, and I give, and I help however I can, right? So you have to have that compassion for Muslims, for each other. All right, so what's the 7 people under Allah's shade? So this is just part of the notes. So Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh said that the Prophet ﷺ said that 7 people on the Day of Judgment, Allah will give them His shade, right? The arsh. Yeah. So why is that significant? It's because the sun is so close, right? Exactly. The sun is like above your head on the Day of Judgment, and it's hot. Like people are drowning in their sweat, like depending on how sinful somebody was. Well, inshallah not. Inshallah, may Allah gather us among under the shade of His throne. So basically, the people, like according to their sins, they're going to be, like some people will be ankle deep in their own sweat because the sun is here, right? So they're sweating profusely. Some people are ankle deep in their sweat. Some people up to their knees. Some people up to their waist. Some people up to their shoulders. They're drowning in their own sweat. And some people are just completely like they're drowning, But this group of people is a special group, yeah. And Allah's throne it's huge, right? Like we can't even imagine how big is Allah's throne. His arsh, how big is it? We can't imagine.
Oh, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
So when we are judged, we're going to be really hot.
Mm-hmm.
God, Allah, He will shape us with His
Yes.
love.
Yes. Yes. So this is basically like the VIP section.
Oh.
Imagine like everybody's standing, right, in the heat, like yeah, inshallah, I mean ya Rabb. So like this is the VIP section. How do you get there? So there's 7 groups of people who get there. So one is a just ruler, like a man or a woman who had power. So this could be like a president, this could be even a principal, this could be a governor. I don't know about teacher, but maybe like a ruler basically, somebody who has a lot of power. Huh? A prince, yeah, a prince, king, yeah, any kind of ruler, but they were on the haqq, right? They were true, they were just, they never oppressed anybody. When a problem was brought to them, they took care of it fairly and justly, right? So, and they didn't like favor people. Like imagine you're the ruler, and now you're somebody who brings your family member, right? And your family member is a criminal. What do? Right? So like if you're corrupt, if you're like a bad person and like people give you bribes or something, or if you like if you don't have fear of Allah, what are you going to do? You're going to hide it. You're going to hide it away, right? You're going to let them go because they're your family. But if you're afraid of Allah, if you have taqwa and you're just, then you're going to punish them even if they're your family. Right? So that's what a just ruler does the right thing even if it's hard. They say the right thing and they do the right thing and they don't care about pleasing people, right? Like half of the politicians, what do when they stand and they're about to get elected and they give those speeches? What do? They promise a lot of things and they don't do anything, right? They're all lying. Most politicians are liars. So do you see how hard it is to get into that category? Because it's most people, they're like, when they go into positions of leadership, they're power hungry, right? They want power, they have that greed, like, I want to rule. Like, that's why a lot of people do it, right? So they're corrupt. Their mindset is corrupt. Their heart is corrupt. They don't actually care about the people. They just care about the money, the position, prestige. So they will lie, make false promises, break people's trust. All these scandals that happen, and they put it under the rug, and they just hide it, and people are getting like millions of dollars. Like, just an example, like pharmaceutical companies, right? Like medicine and stuff. A lot of them are not even good for you. But what do? They pay millions of dollars to the government. The government pressures the insurance companies and the doctors. And then the doctors tell you have to take this medication. You have to take a heart, cholesterol, diabetes, everything, all kinds of medication. And they just put you on so many. But it's the pharmaceutical companies that are paying them to do all this, right? So all the stuff that we see, half of it like advertised and stuff, it's because there's no justice. It's all about making money. There's a lot of corruption. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's a just ruler. Number 2 is the youth who grew up in the worship of Allah, a young person. Why is that special? Because when somebody gets old, it's natural to turn to God. It's natural to turn to Allah because you're weak, right? You're becoming weaker. You're becoming older. You're remembering death, right? You're like, oh, I don't have much time left. So they become afraid. Like, they start reading Quran, they go to Hajj, they start putting on the hijab, everything. Because you're older, you're scared. But a young person, normally, they're like, I have my whole life ahead of me, right? When you're young, your desires are high. You want to, be in a relationship. You see everybody else having a boyfriend, girlfriend, doing all the haram stuff. It looks a lot of fun, right? You want to do it too. Your friends are telling you, oh, forget about this religion stuff. Let's just go have fun. Let's go party. It's very hard for a young person to stay steadfast, to have taqwa, to remember Allah. It's very hard, right? So that's why a young person who does this, they're going to be under Allah's throne, right? And then the scholars have asked, okay, what defines young? What does young really mean, right? So some have said like until the age of like 30 or so, and some have said even up till 40 actually. Because in Islam, when does a man reach like full maturity and wisdom? It's at 40. Right? The prophets, they became prophets at 40. All of them, all the Anbiya, they got the Nubuwah at 40 years old. Because considered like, okay, now you have wisdom, you have hikmah, you're mature now, like fully, Of course, women, we know women mature faster than men, even emotionally and intellectually. So it's not just talking about teenagers alone. It's talking about people even in their 20s and 30s as well. That is still considered youth. But anyone beyond the age of 40, unfortunately, they don't really count in that category anymore. So if you know young people, we should encourage them to come to the deen, bring them, because you're actually making them, helping them, being part of this group, right? All the youth that we bring to the masjid, your nieces, nephews, grandchildren, children, everybody you bring to the masjid, and you make them, involved in the worship of Allah, you're actually helping them be in this category. So you get that part of the reward as well. Number 3, a person whose heart is attached to the masjid. Man or woman, by the way. Any man or woman who loves the masjid, that loves the house of Allah, because they say this is the house of Allah. They can't even explain it, but they just always want to be at the masjid. And they feel this deep sense of peace and, whatever. So it's not, now is it fard to be attached to the masjid? Is it fard? Do we have to be attached to the masjid? It's not. It's extra. It's your heart. It's a gift, exactly. Allah gives you a gift in your heart that you feel inclined. Like men, they only have to come to the masjid to pray, right? And then on Fridays they have to come. Women don't even have to come to the masjid. They can pray at home, right? But the one who's attached, it's like something's pulling them to the masjid. That person is included in this. Number 4, this relates to the previous hadith. The people who love, so it says men, but obviously includes women as well. So 2 men or women who love and meet each other for the sake of Allah, and they leave each other for the sake of Allah. So they are involved in reminding each other about Allah. They're involved in giving a sincere advice to each other, right? They don't help each other in sin. They don't help each other in injustice, transgression. They actually encourage each other to come to Allah. Like, Surah Al-Asr, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. That's the definition of the friends for Allah, right? Your family, your friends, you're with them for no other reason, like extra reason. It's not because like, oh yeah, I just love you so much. No, it's because you're bringing me close to Allah and I'm bringing you close to Allah. And we're going to help each other. We're going to help each other come close to Allah together. Okay, number 5, a man who an extremely beautiful woman seduces for zina, and he rejects this offer, saying, I fear Allah. Again, there's no man here, but we know how hard it is for men. Like imagine if he's alone and there's a beautiful woman and nobody's there, and she says, come do zina, like who's gonna know? Nobody's gonna know, right? Like for that, like for him to resist the invitation, like first, men, they pursue women even if there's no invitation, right?
Sorry, I didn't know number 4. What is that?
Number 4, it's like 2 people. It says men, but it includes women too. Like you meet each other for the sake of Allah, and you leave each other for the sake of Allah. So like, the main purpose of your friendship, your relationship,
Because of Allah.
yeah, is to remind each other about Allah. Like you bring them to halaqas with you, you give them good advice, you stop them from doing sin. Right? So there is a lot of courage involved in there. Like if you have a friend and you're too afraid to tell them that what they're doing is wrong, you're not being true to them, right? You're not being loyal, you're not being sincere. So it requires a lot of sincerity, it requires a lot of courage to be that kind of person.
Be honest.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so yeah, for the man who says, no to zina, when the invitation is right there, like he could just do it, right? But he says, no, I fear Allah. That man will be here too. I believe it includes women as well. If the woman has the invitation and she says no, same thing, she will be here as well. Number 6, a man who gives in charity, again, a person who gives in charity, and they give it so secretly that their left hand doesn't know. So like, we use our right hand for good things, so we should be giving charity with our right hand. And so some people say it's literal, like it's actually like your left hand doesn't even know, like you don't even know how much you gave. Like
To give the charity, nobody knows.
yeah, like sometimes you just pull into your pocket, whatever comes out, it could be that, right? Because we're not supposed to actually excessively count charity either. Not all the time. There's times when you can build in like, your expenses and you say, okay, my budget, like every month I'm gonna give $50 to this organization or something. That's fine. But sometimes we should just give charity without excessively counting it. Sometimes people are like, oh, should I give 10, 20? Should I? No, just, khalas, just give it. Like, it's not, I mean, if it's $100, I don't know. But most of us, we have like 5s, 10s, 20s in our pocket, right? Just, take it out and give it. The other meaning is that you don't give charity to show off in public, right? You're giving it privately. You're giving it silently. Nobody knows you gave it. And khalas, it's between you and Allah. That's it. Now the question comes, can you not give charity publicly? Can you give sadaqah publicly or no?
You shouldn't.
Really?
No. It's between you and Allah.
Okay, it's a trick question.
Boasting.
Okay, that's a good point. It's a trick question. Should we give sadaqah publicly?
Yes.
Depends. You guys are all right. It depends. Why? Because imagine you're in a fundraiser, right? All fundraisers are public, aren't they? Even at the masjid. Exactly, and no, but they do. They say it. They're like, who wants to give the first 20,000? Who wants to give 20,000? And then somebody goes, me, right? And they say that guy, write his name down, right? So, is he showing off?
No, yes and no.
But they don't tell the person who is giving.
He should say privately if it's so much.
But they're asking though. I mean, the fundraiser, they're not going to end the fundraiser, you know that, right? They're going to keep you hostage for the whole night. Like, if nobody gives, they're just going to, you'll be sitting there for like 3 hours, but they won't let you go, right?
Oh, God.
Yeah, so, so here's the thing. If you give sadaqah publicly, and your intention is that you want to encourage people, it's rewardable.
Oh, that is wonderful.
Yeah, so it's all about the heart. It's all about the intention. So we cannot judge. We have no idea if the person who raised their hand was sincere or insincere. There's no way we know. Only Allah knows. So at the end of the day, the knowledge of the heart is still with Allah only.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So the sincerity, if the person is sincere, the sincerity is preserved. And if the person was insincere, Allah protected them. Because we don't know, right? We don't see their heart. So we are supposed to actually think the best of them, right? And the other thing, in the Quran, Allah in Surah Al-Waqi'ah, Allah describes as-sabiqun as-sabiqun, right? And He's praising them. Who are the sabiqun? The ones who run towards good deeds first. They run towards good deeds. So that guy, if he says, oh, who wants to give 20,000? He says, me. Guess what reward he just got? He got the reward for being the first. So we should actually encourage kids to do this. right? So encouraging healthy competition, like in the classroom, like, oh, who wants to recite Fatiha first? And the kid goes, me. Those kids, mashallah, they're going to go ahead in life because the first person to do good, because if you see everybody doing it, it's easy to do it. Okay, khalas, everyone's giving, sadaqah, I'll give $1 too, But it's hard to be the first one, right? It's hard to be the first one to give. So that's why there's an extra reward associated with the person who does the good deed first, right?
It's better to be anonymous.
Yes, but if you fear for your heart, let's say I know myself, and I know that I'm the type of person who's like, oh, I wonder what people are going to think about me. I want people to think good about me. And you feel in your heart the desire to be known, then you should give sadaqah privately. Because you know yourself, right? So now it's not wise for you to give public sadaqah anymore. Now it's better to give in private, right? So it depends on the person. Depends on the person, depends on the situation. Basically. So that person who's like very, like they basically have tried, like they have given sadaqah in secret, they're included in this category for that reason. Because they were so concerned about their sincerity. They were so concerned about their heart. And number 7, a person who remembers Allah alone and his eyes become wet with tears. Like now to get to that point, like how connected do you have to be, right? It's not easy to just make yourself cry. Like I can't just read a book and start crying. Like I can't, sometimes we can't even open the Quran and start crying. It doesn't happen immediately, right? Takes some time, takes attention. Yeah, exactly. So you have to know the meaning of what you're reading, right? You have to connect with the words. What is Allah saying to me? Your heart softens, right? You reflect, you do tadabbur on the words of Allah. You think about Him, you think about His blessings. And you're just in this like connection mode, right? Or in salah, for example, like you're praying alone and you just feel so like at peace and you're remembering Allah, and then you naturally cry, right? That's what it's talking about. Because you put in the effort. You built that relationship with Allah, right? And obviously when you're alone, because it's easy to cry again in public. Sometimes people just cry when they don't feel anything, right? So this is talking about when you're alone. Huh? Between you and Allah, yes. Yeah. So these are the people who will get the under the shade. Yeah, this hadith is very beautiful. Okay. How many? I think it's almost Isha. Huh? Okay. I think so. Okay. All right. So the next hadith is songs make hypocrisy grow in the heart just as water makes crops grow. So this hadith is actually weak, and it's more likely that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said it rather than the Prophet ﷺ himself, because sometimes what happens in hadith books is that somebody says that something is a hadith, but it's not really a hadith, it's a statement of the scholars, the Sahaba, right? Qawl al-Sahabi. So Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, it's more likely that he said this rather than the Prophet ﷺ. So we're not going to call it a hadith, we're just going to call it a statement. So what, yes? Hadith is something that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said. So it's like a statement of his, whereas Quran is like the word of Allah, the actual word of Allah. Okay, so the statement is, songs make hypocrisy grow in the heart. So like, they're not talking about all music, because there is a ikhtilaf, there's difference of opinion about music, right? There's some scholars who say that music is completely haram, all of it, just no matter what, all instruments are haram. There's other scholars who say that if the words are pure and clean, then instruments are okay. Like, Maher Zain type, I guess, or like Sami Yusuf, like they use instruments, but they're singing about Allah and the Prophet ﷺ. So there's some scholars who say it's okay. But what everybody agrees on, right, is that bad language, vulgar language is haram. Right? So the type of music that kids listen to today, nasheeds are okay. If it's clean, it's okay. Like if it's, like some scholars, they even allow like piano, for example, just alone, like piano by itself, because there's nothing, huh?
Only Muslim song, yeah?
Well, not just Muslim songs, but like even just music, but no words. Some scholars allow that. There's a difference of opinion.
So what does that mean?
So by songs here, they're talking about the bad lyrics. Like the, Yeah, it makes hypocrisy grow in the heart. It's like it makes nifaq.
As the water makes the crop, that goes to your heart, it makes your heart feel bad.
Yes.
That's what happened to the
Yeah.
kids now.
Yeah.
They cannot-
Exactly. So it's like, you know, when you have, if you're a gardener, right? You know, like when you put water in the soil,
Yeah.
the quality of the water is going to make the crops grow, correct? So like if you have like bad quality water, let's say you have chemical water and you put it into the soil, what kind of crops are going to grow? They're going to be poisoned, right? Which is what they do now, like the, you know, the stuff they sell at the supermarkets. Why is we have to eat organic? Because they spray so many chemicals on it, right? On everything. So it's poison now. So it's like he's saying that when you listen to this bad music, like bad lyrics, the ones that talk about like just haram things, you know, talking about alcohol and drugs and girls and violence and
Today, yeah.
exactly the music of today, like the language they use is so haram, like it makes you think about stuff, makes you feel all this stuff, right? It makes you desire it. So that kind of music is haram. Everybody said it, right? Doesn't matter. We're not talking about instruments anymore, but like the haram type of lyrics, the ones that make you go towards desires and shaitani stuff, that's haram, right? So he's saying that when you put that into your heart, what is going to come out? Yeah, like you're gonna become like shaitan, right? Yeah, like if you, like so input and output, right? Like because if I put in poison in my body, I'm not gonna smell like perfume, right? I'm gonna stink if I put poison in my body. I'm gonna die, right? My heart is gonna get poisoned. But if I put good things into my body, Allah says eat halal and tayyib, right? He didn't just say eat halal. Halal is good. Halal we have to eat. But you know in Surah Baqarah it says eat halal and tayyib. What is tayyib?
Something good.
What is it? What kind of food? He said eat halal and tayyib food. Well, the meat is halal, but what is tayyib?
Like that has a lot of benefits for you?
It's pure. It's pure. Yeah, it has a lot of benefit. It's clean. Like it's not like dirty. You know, it's clean. So, okay, all right. So we're gonna stop here. Subhanahu wa ta'ala izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wa alaikum salam. All right, we're done.